Behind every cold case is a family still waiting, a friend still searching, a truth still hidden. This channel is a voice for the voiceless, a place where silence breaks. We revisit real unsolved cases that remain open because someone, somewhere, knows something. The world may have moved on, but we have not. On Saturday, August 30th, 2025, tragedy unfolded inside the Woodland Villa apartments near Detroit. Sarah Carroll, a 20-year-old Michigan college student, was shot and killed by her ex-boyfriend, Lincoln. The young woman, who had been stalked and harassed by him in the months leading up to the incident, lost her life in a moment of devastating violence. Authorities later confirmed that Lincoln turned the gun on himself immediately afterward, ending his own life in what police classified as a murder-suicide. When Westland police officers arrived at the scene, they encountered evidence that left no doubt about what had taken place. Sarah had been shot multiple times with a shotgun, and Lincoln's body was discovered nearby. Investigators soon learned that, after killing Sarah, Lincoln called 911 himself. During that call, he admitted to the crime, stating that he had just killed his girlfriend. Moments later, he ended his life before law enforcement could intervene. This sequence of events not only established the timeline of Sarah's final moments, but also underscored the calculated nature of the violence. The confirmation from police quickly spread across the community, making clear that the case was not an unsolved mystery, but a confirmed act of intimate partner homicide followed by suicide. By beginning with the undeniable facts of this night, the focus remains on the stark reality of what happened. Sarah Carroll's murder was sudden, final, and irreversible. The brutality of the crime set the stage for the painful aftermath that would follow, shaping how her family, friends, and community came to understand both the loss and the circumstances leading up to it. Sarah Carroll was a 20-year-old student at Schoolcraft College in Michigan, working toward her dream of becoming a physician assistant. She was known by those around her as someone with determination, intelligence, and a strong sense of purpose. Her life was centered on education, ambition, and the hope of building a meaningful career in healthcare. Friends and family describe her as someone at the very beginning of a promising journey, a young woman who carried optimism and direction into every space she entered. A GoFundMe campaign created on behalf of her parents, James and Jennifer Carroll, offered a glimpse into how she was remembered by those who loved her. It described Sarah as smart, brave, strong, and as someone whose smile lit up every room she entered. These words reflected not only her personality, but also the impression she left on others, even in everyday interactions. Her father, James, later emphasized that Sarah was deeply loved by everyone she met. To him, she was not only a daughter, but also a source of joy, someone whose presence was felt in both family and community. Sarah Carroll's story began with hope and promise before it was cut short. Sarah Carroll's relationship with Lincoln began with the ordinary rhythm of young adulthood, but gradually turned into a dangerous and threatening connection. The two were together for almost a year before problems began to surface, and what had once seemed like a typical relationship soon became a source of fear and instability for Sarah. According to her mother, Jennifer, the difficulties reached a breaking point when Lincoln's behavior escalated into stalking and harassment. For 2 months leading up to the tragedy, Sarah endured unwanted attention and persistent monitoring from her ex-boyfriend. His actions created a constant shadow over her life, one that she tried to confront by pursuing legal protection. Jennifer later revealed that Sarah had been in the process of seeking a personal protection order against Lincoln, a step that underscored both her awareness of the risks and her desire to reclaim a sense of safety. However, Sarah chose not to disclose the full extent of Lincoln's stalking to her parents. She kept the details of his harassment private, leaving her family unaware of just how serious the situation had become until it was too late. In speaking afterward, Jennifer urged other parents to remain vigilant and involved in their children's lives. She emphasized that silence can sometimes mask danger and that open communication is critical in recognizing warning signs. Sarah's experience illustrated how quickly a troubled relationship can turn violent, and how important it is to identify patterns of control, intimidation, and obsession before tragedy occurs. On the night of Saturday, August 30th, 2025, violence struck at the Woodland Villa apartments near Detroit. Inside her residence, Sarah Carroll faced a culmination of months of fear and harassment. Lincoln, her former boyfriend, entered the apartment armed with a shotgun. In a matter of moments, he shot Sarah multiple times, ending the life of the 20-year-old student. The act was deliberate, final, and left no opportunity for intervention. After carrying out the killing, Lincoln picked up the phone and dialed 911. During that call, he confessed to having just killed his girlfriend, acknowledging what he had done in plain terms. The confession was both chilling and direct, offering no doubt about responsibility. Before authorities could arrive, Lincoln turned the gun on himself, committing suicide at the scene. By the time Westland police entered the apartment, both Sarah and Lincoln were gone, leaving investigators to document what was quickly ruled a murder-suicide. In the aftermath, Sarah's father, James Carroll, spoke publicly about what he believed contributed to the tragedy. He explained that Lincoln had been suffering from mental illness, a struggle that remained untreated. For James, the case was not only about the devastating loss of his daughter, but also about a broader message. He urged families to recognize warning signs in their own children and to ensure that those dealing with mental health issues receive proper care before those struggles escalate into violence. The night underscored the deadly intersection of intimate partner conflict and unaddressed mental illness, leaving behind grief and unanswered questions. In the days following Sarah Carroll's death, her family and community were overwhelmed with grief. Her father, James Carroll, broke the devastating news on Facebook, writing simply, "I lost my sweet daughter last night." His words captured the rawness of a father's heartbreak. At a vigil held in Sarah's memory, James expressed gratitude for support the family had received, reminding those gathered that Sarah had touched countless lives with her warmth. Her mother, Jennifer, also shared her pain publicly. In a heartbreaking Facebook post, she called Sarah her poor sweet girl and admitted she was broken and in shock, unable to comprehend the loss of her child. Cousin and Quinlan remembered Sarah as beautiful, sweet, and smart, while her middle school friend, Aaliyah Wright, recalled the way Sarah's humor and kindness made others feel seen and loved. The tributes reflected a common thread. Sarah was more than the circumstances of her death. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman with dreams and laughter. The candlelight vigil, filled with prayers and tears, underscored the deep void left by her passing and the enduring love of those who knew her. Sarah Carroll's death was not only a personal tragedy, but also a stark warning about issues that too often remain hidden. Her mother, Jennifer, urged parents to look more deeply into their children's lives. She explained that Sarah had endured harassment and stalking in the months before her death, but she had shielded the severity of it from her parents. Jennifer's message to others was clear: stay present, ask questions, and never assume silence means safety. Friends also used their grief to speak out. In her tribute, Sarah's middle school friend, Aaliyah Wright, wrote that nobody deserves this. She encouraged anyone experiencing abuse or threats to reach out for help and to involve law enforcement if necessary. Her words echoed the wider call for greater awareness of the dangers of stalking and the way it can escalate if left unchallenged. For Sarah's father, James, the tragedy highlighted another urgent issue: untreated mental illness. He reminded families that addressing psychological struggles early is vital, not only for the safety of those suffering, but also for people around them. Together, these reflections carry powerful lessons. They underline the importance of early intervention, whether in cases of domestic abuse, harassment, or mental health struggles. Sarah's story is a sobering reminder that silence, secrecy, or delayed action can have devastating consequences, but vigilance, compassion, and timely help can save lives. While Sarah Carroll's story revealed the dangers of intimate partner violence, another case from 2 decades earlier shows how ambition and trust can be manipulated into tragedy. In 2003, Christy Johnson was a 21-year-old woman living in Los Angeles. Originally from Michigan, she had moved west with hopes of working in the entertainment industry. Friends remember her as vibrant, determined, and eager to carve out her own place in Hollywood. On February 15th, 2003, Christy believed she was on the cusp of opportunity. She had been approached by Victor Paleologos, a man posing as a Hollywood photographer with ties to casting. He convinced Christy that she had a chance to audition for a role in a James Bond film. Paleologos even instructed her to wear a specific outfit, black clothing with high heels, for what he described as a screen test. That afternoon, Christy left for the supposed audition. She never returned. Her family and friends quickly grew alarmed when calls went unanswered and she failed to show up to work. Within days, Christie was officially reported missing, and concern spread among her community. The case would soon reveal that Christie had been the target of calculated deception. Unlike Sarah's tragedy, rooted in an abusive relationship, Christie's death underscored a different but equally chilling danger: predators who exploit trust, dreams, and vulnerability. Her story serves as a sobering reminder that not all threats come from familiar faces. Sometimes, they're strangers who cloak violence in promises of opportunity. Christie Johnson's disappearance did more than launch a search. It prompted other women to step forward with chillingly similar encounters. Among them was Susan Murphy, who recalled an unsettling experience shortly before Christie vanished. After reading about Christie's case, Murphy recognized a man described. He had introduced himself to her as Victor Thomas and promised an audition for a James Bond film. Murphy's memory of that meeting was vivid. Paleologist had told her to wear a specific outfit and meet him alone, echoing the exact instructions given to Christie. But unlike Christie, Murphy felt a growing unease. Trusting her instincts, she brought her boyfriend along to the supposed audition. When Paleologist saw she was not alone, his demeanor shifted. The encounter ended without incident, but it left Murphy shaken. When news of Christie's disappearance broke, Murphy realized she might have narrowly escaped the same fate. She contacted police, describing the man in detail and helping create a composite sketch. Her account matched reports from other women, including Alice Walker, who had also been approached with the same story. Together, their testimonies revealed a pattern. Paleologist was not a chance predator, but a calculated con artist who repeatedly used the Bond audition ruse to lure women. These women's bravery became the turning point in the case. Their willingness to share unsettling experiences gave investigators a clear suspect. The composite sketch circulated widely, corroborated by multiple witnesses. Piece by piece, police connected Christie's disappearance to Paleologist, exposing his long history of deception and violence. What began as one woman's disappearance soon became a story of collective courage, proving that speaking out can dismantle even the most manipulative lies. The tragedies of Sarah Carroll and Christie Johnson, though separated by decades and circumstances, reveal haunting patterns in violence against women. Sarah's life was cut short by an ex-boyfriend whose escalating stalking turned lethal. Christie's hopes were destroyed by a predator who cloaked his intentions in false promises of Hollywood success. One case grew from intimacy and control, the other from deception and ambition. Yet both ended in the same way: the silencing of young women with bright futures. Sarah's mother, Jennifer, urged parents to recognize warning signs and remain deeply engaged in their children's lives. Her plea came from painful hindsight, a reminder that dangers can lurk even when children seem safe. Sarah's friend Aaliyah Wright echoed this message, insisting that no one should dismiss threats or remain silent when feeling unsafe. Their words underline the urgency of listening to survivors and intervening before danger escalates. Christie's story added another layer to this lesson. She was targeted not by someone she loved, but by a stranger who preyed on her aspirations. The bravery of women like Susan Murphy and Alice Walker, who shared their near escapes, showed the power of speaking out. Their voices exposed Paleologist's pattern and offered justice for Christie, though too late to save her life. Together, these cases highlight recurring truths. Violence thrives in silence, predators exploit vulnerability, and awareness is a community responsibility. Sarah and Christie's stories, though deeply personal, are part of a larger struggle to protect women from both intimate and predatory violence. Remembering them means more than mourning. It means refusing to ignore red flags, supporting survivors, and committing to a culture where safety and respect are non-negotiable. Let's talk about the unsolved disappearance of 6 YRS-old Sasha Lee November, Cape Town, South Africa. On Sunday, May 3rd, 2015, 6-year-old Sasha Lee November disappeared from outside her family home in Gronall Walk, Hanover Park, Cape Town. She had been playing near the residence when she suddenly vanished, leaving behind a silence that quickly spread through the neighborhood. For her family, the moment marked the beginning of an ordeal that has lasted for years. Sasha Lee's disappearance was first treated as a missing person case. Her mother went to police station the same day, desperate for help, but was instructed to return after 24 hours. That single delay would later be seen as a critical mistake, costing investigators valuable time in the crucial first hours. As hours turned into days, the urgency grew, but the initial response had already left gaps that would be impossible to close. Witness statements soon changed the course of the case. Reports suggested that Shasha Lee had been seen with a man, though his identity remained unclear. These accounts shifted the case from a missing child to a suspected kidnapping, but the November family was never formally informed of the reclassification. What should have been immediate action became a slow and uncertain process, adding to the family frustration and despair. The community responded with determination, rallying together to distribute pamphlets and organize searches. Yet despite their efforts, no trace of the little girl was found. Each passing year has only deepened the pain. To this day, vigils are held to mark the anniversary of her disappearance. For Hanover Park, the case left a permanent scar. For her family, it was the start of a nightmare without resolution, one that still lingers with unanswered questions and the haunting absence of a 6-year-old girl. Shasha Lee November was more than the face on a missing person poster. She was the youngest of 6 children, growing up in the community of Hanover Park, Cape Town. At the time of her disappearance in 2015, she was a grade 1 pupil at Belmore Primary School, beginning her journey in education with the curiosity and innocence of a child still discovering the world. She was described as small and slender, with brown eyes that carried a spark of youth. Her reddish-brown hair was often braided, and her thin lips gave her a delicate expression. A burn scar on one of her cheeks made her appearance distinctive, marking her features with something uniquely her own. These details, recorded on her missing poster, remain the only way her family and community can describe her today, as the years have passed without knowing how she might have grown. Shasha Lee's family life was complicated. Her parents, Sandra and Calvin November, both struggled with drug addiction. Their battles shaped the environment in which Shasha Lee was raised, creating instability and hardship during her early years. Reports of neglect reached the Department of Social Development, and even her school raised concerns about her behavior, hoping intervention might bring stability. Yet meaningful action never came. Although some of her siblings were placed in foster care, Shasha Lee remained at home. Both parents have since passed away, leaving behind children who continue to search for answers about their sister's disappearance. With the parents gone, the burden of advocacy has fallen largely on her siblings, particularly her sister Jasmine Harris. For them, the absence of Shasha Lee is not only a story of loss, but also a reminder of the vulnerability she faced in childhood. Her life was brief, but her story continues to resonate. When Shasha Lee November disappeared on May 3, 2015, the first official response set the stage for years of frustration. Her mother rushed to the local police station to file a report, desperate for immediate action. Instead, she was told to return after 24 hours. That delay would later be remembered as one of the most damaging missteps, as a crucial window for gathering evidence and eyewitness accounts slipped away. The case was initially registered as a missing person. Only later, after community members reported seeing Shasha Lee with an unknown man, was it reclassified as a kidnapping. Yet the family was never formally informed of this important change. For them, the investigation remained confusing and incomplete. Valuable time and clarity had already been lost. Years later, retired Colonel Dawood Lang, who served as station commander at the time, acknowledged the failures. He admitted the investigation contained many holes, from basic procedural errors to the lack of urgency. One example was the distribution of pamphlets that carried no detective contact numbers, making it impossible for people with information to reach investigators directly. Potential evidence may have been lost forever because of this oversight. Equally concerning was a failure to examine Shasha Lee's immediate environment. Despite her parents' well-known struggles with drug addiction, they were not thoroughly questioned until much later. Lang contrasted this with the more recent disappearance of Jocelyn Smith, where police immediately focused on the mother and her partner. In Shasha Lee's case, such scrutiny never happened. Her sister, Jasmine Harris, has consistently voiced criticism, insisting that earlier action and accountability could have changed the outcome. Instead, the investigation became defined by missed opportunities, leaving the family with little faith in the system meant to protect them. In the days following Shashley November's disappearance, the community of Hanover Park came together in a determined effort to find her. Neighbors, friends, and local activists organized search parties that scoured the area, refusing to let the case fade into silence. Pamphlets were distributed across the neighborhood, and word spread quickly as residents worked together to raise awareness and gather information. Among those leading the charge was Sophia Samuels, an activist linked to Women to Women. She played a central role in mobilizing search efforts and ensuring the case remained in public view. Her involvement reflected the determination of grassroots organizations to fill the gaps left by official channels. In support of these efforts, the City of Cape Town announced a reward of R$250,000 for any information that could lead to Shashley's safe return. Over time, vigils became a yearly tradition. Each anniversary brought the community together again, both to honor Shashley's memory and to demand more action from authorities. Yet despite the collective resolve, frustration grew. Residents alleged that vital information shared with police never reached investigators. In one instance, community members even stormed the family home, seeking clarity in the absence of answers from officials. For Hanover Park, the solidarity was powerful, but it was matched by disillusionment. Despite the ongoing distribution of posters from organizations like Missing Children SA, no breakthrough came. The community's tireless efforts stood in sharp contrast to the slow, fractured response of institutions. Behind Shashley November's disappearance lies a troubling record of missed interventions. Long before the day she vanished, warning signs about her safety had been raised. Reports of parental neglect and substance abuse were filed with the Department of Social Development, yet action was limited and inconsistent. Some of her siblings were eventually placed in foster care, but Shashley remained at home, left vulnerable in an environment already marked by instability. What is more alarming is that the department later admitted there were no direct records of support or monitoring for her. Despite red flags, including behavioral concerns raised by her school, no structured follow-up ever took place. The agencies responsible for safeguarding children overlooked the very systems meant to protect her. Retired Colonel Dawood Lang was candid in his assessment. In interviews, he admitted that both police and social services failed Shashley. According to him, opportunities to intervene, whether through early removal from home, closer supervision, or immediate escalation of her disappearance, were systematically missed. This was not an isolated lapse, but part of a broader pattern. The case highlighted long-standing flaws in South Africa's child protection framework. Bureaucratic inefficiency, weak interagency communication, and a lack of urgency in addressing child welfare concerns. The absence of coordination between schools, social workers, and law enforcement meant that crucial information slipped through the cracks. Shashley's story is therefore more than a single tragedy. It exposes a system where vulnerable children often fall unnoticed, with devastating consequences. Her disappearance underscores the urgent need for reform, proof that without structural accountability, history risks repeating itself. Shashley November's disappearance was not an isolated tragedy. Her case forms part of a troubling pattern in Gronall Walk, a small section of Hanover Park that has witnessed the unexplained vanishing of multiple young girls over the years. In 1999, the community was shaken by the disappearance of 13-year-old Michelle Plotjes. She was last seen walking to a nearby shop, but she never returned home. Despite extensive searches, her case remains unresolved. 14 years later, in 2013, Sadia Katitis, a teenager from the same neighborhood, also vanished under mysterious circumstances. Like Michelle, she was never found. When Shashley disappeared in 2015, Gronall Walk became marked by a haunting reality. 3 young girls, all from the same small neighborhood, missing without answers. The similarities are chilling. Each case involved vulnerable children in a high-risk environment, and none resulted in closure. Advocates such as retired Colonel Dawood Lang and activist Sophia Samuels argue that these disappearances should never have been treated in isolation. Instead, investigators should have asked hard questions about possible links within the immediate community, whether the same individuals, networks, or conditions were at play. By failing to connect the dots, opportunities to uncover the truth may have been lost. To this day, suspicions linger among residents. Many believe the answers lie closer to home than authorities have admitted. For families and activists, the repeated failures represent more than investigative blind spots. They point to systemic neglect and the possibility of unchecked criminal networks operating within Hanover Park. Shashali's case, seen in this context, is not just one tragedy, but part of a broader pattern that demands accountability and deeper investigation. Nearly a decade after the disappearance of 6-year-old Shashali November, her family's search for justice remains unrelenting. At the center of this fight is her sister, Jasmine Harris, who has carried the weight of advocacy in the absence of their late parents. Harris has pressed authorities repeatedly for progress, but meaningful updates have been scarce. In 2022, the investigation was transferred to the Nyanga Family Violence, Child Protection, and Sexual Offenses Unit, raising hopes that specialized attention might uncover new leads. Yet, despite this move, no breakthroughs have materialized. For the November family, the silence of the investigation only deepens a wound left by years of uncertainty. The loss of both parents has compounded the family's grief, leaving the siblings to shoulder not only unanswered questions, but also the emotional void of parental support. Requests for age progression reconstructions, which would provide an image of what Shashali might look like today, have gone unanswered. Without these tools, the family struggles to maintain a tangible vision of the child they still hope to find. Harris's message has remained consistent and resolute. Investigators must search closer to home, taking seriously the suspicions voiced by Hanover Park residents. For her, the case is not only about finding Shashali, but also about demanding accountability from a system that failed her sister from the start. Through vigils, public appeals, and relentless questioning, Jasmine Harris continues to ensure that Shashali's memory is not forgotten, even as justice remains elusive. In 2025, 10 years after 6-year-old Shashali November vanished from Gronall Walk in Hanover Park, the case remains unresolved. Police confirm that the investigation is still active, yet no new leads have emerged to explain her disappearance. The lack of closure continues to weigh heavily on her family, particularly her sister, Jasmine Harris, who has spent years advocating for answers. Despite the passage of time, the memory of Shashali remains vivid for Hanover Park residents, who recalled a young girl and the circumstances of her abduction with sorrow and frustration. Activist organizations, including Missing Children SA, persist in circulating her posters and raising awareness about her case. They argue that cold cases must not be forgotten, emphasizing that sustained attention increases the likelihood of new information surfacing. Community members and former officers, including retired Colonel Dawood Lang, agree that the investigation suffered from critical deficiencies from the beginning. Early police missteps, delayed responses, and insufficient scrutiny of her home environment left vital questions unanswered and potentially erased key evidence. The Department of Social Development and other child protection agencies have also been criticized for failing to intervene effectively before Shashali disappeared. Reports of neglect and parental substance abuse were documented, yet meaningful support or investigation did not occur in time to protect her. The systemic failures highlighted by this case demonstrate how bureaucratic inefficiency, weak coordination, and lapses in accountability can have lasting, tragic consequences. For the November family, the decade-long uncertainty is a daily reminder of these shortcomings. The case underscores the importance of urgency in missing children investigations, the need for scrutiny of the home environment, and the requirement for institutional responsibility at every stage. While hope remains that someone may yet provide information, Shashali's disappearance stands as a cautionary tale. It serves not only as a personal tragedy for her family, but also as a critical lesson for Hanover Park and South Africa as a whole. Missing children demand swift, coordinated, and thorough action, and no case should ever be allowed to fade into silence.